And welcome to the Daily Space Weather. Congratulations on realizing the channel exists as we just bring you the most detailed imagery and comprehensive space weather you'll find in the known universe. And thanks for tuning into the Smash News Network, least busted name in news. We're delighted to have you stargazing with us, just staring at the sun. And don't worry, folks, we're not just showing you this classic 24-hour SDO 304 angstroms wavelength. We've also added 193 angstroms to show additional features. Let's go around the horn here as there's plenty of stuff going on, including another solar polar vortex. So here's a great close-up of what's going on in the north heliographic polar region. A bunch of plasma there circling around, traveling at something like 100 kilometers per second, at least. Another solar polar vortex. I suspect you'll hear about it. And let's go around the horn. Here's the northwestern limb, and you can see some major plasma reorientation happening there, right in the center portion of the solar disk. If you're wondering if there are any coronal mass ejections from that, we'll cover it later in the video. We've also got the equatorial western solar limb, since there is some activity setting there, especially in the southwest. Some propensity for large flares does exist in that region. We've also got the southwest. You can see a long string of sunspots there, making their way right to the center of solar disk, right at the end of that movie. That would be in your upper left screen. And here's a better view of all of that. We've also got a huge number of solar filaments, so you may see some dark features there. Many of those are absorption features. Massive plumes of material suspended, filamentary plumes of material suspended by magnetic fields, defying solar gravity. Also, another new sunspot has recently risen. It is this group right here, and it is magnetically complex. So we'll see the sunspot number and likely the radio flux rise yet again today. I suspect we're going to see the radio flux make it back over 200. Here is the northeastern limb. Massive filament here making its way all the way around to out of sight over there. And a likely another sunspot group rising over here. So that's got something to do with the expectation of a 10.7 centimeter radio flux making it back over 200 solar flux units. Let's take a look at the full disk view in SDO intensity gram. That's yesterday plus today. And you may not be able to see that new sunspot. Let's switch to colorized magnetogram. And right there is where that new sunspot group is. So again, I checked it out during show prep. It was beta gamma class at the very least. We're going to take a look at things like volcanoes and earthquakes. But first, if you enjoy the content, consider pressing like, subscribe, share, etc. We created a massive web ring here at the Smash News Network, least busted name in news, because back in 2019, we got some kind of a ban for no good reason on Facebook, and that was when we decided to launch our own website. Because if you can't join them, beat them. So smashomash.com is where you can help us out with clicks, or you can join the Smash team. These videos were brought to you in part by Gold and Silver Smash team members. So thanks especially to Gold and Silver Smash team members. Also, there is a bronze level. If you're unable or unwilling to open your cobweb-encrusted wallet, you'll still get email alerts for certain things. Additional content for Gold and Silver Smash team members. The best value is a Gold annual paid-up subscription. You'll also find a link to the Hemp Lucid shop. The 420 sale continues through 420. You can save 40% on the sale. Click our link below the video or on our homepage. You'll find that, as well as don't forget to enter the promo code SMASHOMASH to save some dough on checkout. The promo code SMASHOMASH for your Hemp Lucid purchases. And today's featured product is Do the Math from our merch shop. Yeah, and you can save 20% over there also by entering the promo code TEACH20. So this one features a fantastic ultra-high resolution image of the SDO 171 angstroms wavelength of the closest star, Helios, El Sol, aka the Sun, and of course, our well-known math equation. As a lot of entities are out there doing the math and sucking at it, 8 equals capital D. So that's another way you can help the channel out, is by picking up merch. There's even a do the math clock. There's a pin. There's even an acrylic block. So it's not just t-shirts. Also, you get a laptop skin or perhaps a mini skirt. Imploring you to do the math. If you suck at cosmology and astrophysics, we are imploring you to either learn or retire your crappy YouTube channel. Enter the promo code TEACH20 to save 20%. And again, the homepage is smashomash.com. So welcome to the Neo Renaissance. Once again, congratulations on realizing the Smash News Network least busted name in news exists. If you're wondering what I'm a fan of, the answer is nothing. Well, facts and the truth. I guess I'm a fan of facts and the truth, and that's it. Smashomash.com. Help us out with clicks, and let's get to volcanoes. So this is Ale, located in Ethiopia. A volcano now back on the list. Just kind of coming out of the flat ground there and producing a bit of a cinder cone. Ale now on the list also. From April 14th, here's an image from NOAA of a bunch of ash and gas making it across the Pacific. So you can expect to see purple skies from Semeru, and if the clouds ever clear up here in Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania, we might see purple skies from Shivaluch. Yeah, Shivaluch. It did inject gas and ash into the stratosphere. So anyway, there's that map from NOAA. Oh, it's a GIF animation? Okay. I'm not seeing any animation there. Anyway, let's just check out the list here of volcanoes, starting out with, indeed, Shivaluch. So it does continue with its enhanced activity here. Again, expect to see some purple skies, probably even coming to Europe sometime soon, as Shivaluch continues to erupt in a spectacular fashion. Sakurajima producing a 7,000-foot ash plume. Also, Suwanosejima exploding, 5,000-foot ash plume there. Semeru exploding, flight level 140 over East Java. That's part of Indonesia. Dakono on the Isle of Halmahera, Indonesia, exploding, flight level 070. That's 7,000-foot ash plume. And Katmai now exploding on the Alaskan Peninsula. So Katmai now erupting, flight level 060. That's a 6,000-foot plume of volcanic ash. Please do not hang glide over the caldera, and don't pole vault the caldera. It could be unhealthful. We need the views on YouTube. Also, Popocatépetl exploding in central Mexico. And if you're viewing on BitChute, go subscribe on YouTube. You're missing like 90% of the content. Popocatépetl producing a 21,000-foot ash plume over central Mexico. It's a flight level 210. Santiaguido dispersed its ash over Guatemala, fertilizing the countryside and making for some great coffee fields. Fuego exploding in Guatemala, flight level 180. It's an 18,000-foot ash plume. Sangay exploding in Ecuador, flight level 210, 21,000-foot ash plume. 22-foot ash plume over Peru from Sabancaya. And Ale, it's not really producing an ash plume. It's producing an effusive eruption and a persisting lava lake. Ejecting fresh and plastic lava clots which pile up onto each other into dozens of meters high deposits. Ale in Ethiopia. Looking at global seismicity here for the past 24 hours, things have been pretty calm. There were only 2 5-magnitude quakes in the past 24 hours, and they just occurred in the past couple of hours. So we'll scroll up the list here, citing the quakes over a 5 magnitude. Still some small quakes happening around California, and it looks like around Oregon as well. So if you're in an earthquake-prone zone, know what will happen if buildings begin to collapse. And any earthquake can be a foreshock. So anyway, the largest quakes of the past 24 hours just occurred in the past couple of hours. There was a 5.2 at the Kermadec Islands at 11:01 Universal Time. There was a 5.5 on the eastern shores of the Indian Ocean there at Pagar Alam, Indonesia. That 5.5 was at 11:05, so only 4 minutes later. And then about 37 minutes later, Kermadec Islands had a quake. So those are the only 5 magnitude quakes in the past 24 hours, all occurring within an hour of each other. 5.2, 5.5, and then 5.0. Getting back to space, and by the way, we're going physically to space. We don't just bring it in figuratively here at the Smash News Network. We're going to bring it to space physically, which, of course, we'll get to in the future. Not too much about that, and thanks for leaving comments, Mr. Bordages. And thanks for leaving comments, Robert, as well. Good morning to both of you, gentlemen, and let's get back to space. Space, a frontier. These are the voyages of the Smash News Network, least busted name in news. So there's the classic 171 angstroms wavelength. Let's add 211 angstroms wavelength to highlight the extended corona. Shall we? Number 1, I order you to refrain from taking a number 2. If you are worried the sun is shutting down, you can stop worrying. It's just not happening. By the way, the 10.7 centimeter radial flux has broken through one of the support levels, probably the most significant support level. 10.7 centimeter radial flux is now at 176 solar flux units. And if you're wondering what the 10.7 is, it comes from the upper chromosphere and lower corona, about where my pointer is. And that radio frequency, the power of that radio flux, which is in solar flux units, a solar flux unit is 10,000 Jansky, which is just a measurement of radiation traveling through space. And it's directly proportional to the sunspot number. As you can see, each peak here represented by a peak in the red line and the black line being the radio flux of the past year, the red line being the sunspot number. And it just broke through 170. Well, there was a support level here around 155, and it snapped right through that, now approaching the new support level at 180. And it could be off to the races. We are expecting this to be back around 200 in just a couple of days. Keep in mind the magnetic environment can change suddenly, and sunspots are driven by said magnetic environment. Continuing to our space weather enthusiast dashboard, NOAA not forecasting any geomagnetic storms or geomagnetic unrest, and we are expecting a coronal mass ejection impact sometime after midday on April 19th. So CME coming. At least we think there is. Apparently NOAA's not agreeing. But sometime after 12 noon Universal Time on the 19th, on Wednesday, we are expecting a minor CME impact. It's not super dense, but that could produce like 4 to 6 hours of geomagnetic storm conditions. Maybe if something like a KP6 could occur from that. So we'll be keeping you posted on that. Again, sign up for email alerts over at smashomash.com/smashteam, and you'll get email alerts. Again, they are free to the bronze level, and if you want to, at smashomash.com email address, join at the gold level, we will hook you up. And let's check some more stats. I'm sorry, the radial flux is at 178 solar flux units. I think I said 176. It's actually at 178. Anyway, here's Earth's magnetic moment for the past 4 hours from space. That's about 12 Earth diameters. And of course, you can see the crescent Earth represented over there on the right. As from the meridional view, from the perspective of a solar proton, Earth is shaped like a crescent. It's funny because it's real. Anyway, that's the past 4 hours of magnetohydrodynamic pressure. Geomagnetically calm conditions are currently the status. So here are the past 4 hours of Earth's magnetic moment from the ground. And by the way, if there is something really, really spooky and scary happening with the Earth's pole shift, you would see it reflected in this data. You don't. If you're scared of the pole shift, it's pretty sad. I think you've been believing propaganda and nonsense on YouTube. Next, the planetary K-index, an average of global geomagnetism. Currently KP2, planetary K index at 2 is the situation. Again, geomagnetically calm. And let's take a look at the real-time solar wind data. Measured at Lagrange 1 by the ACE and Discover. Current conditions are solar wind density about 3.8 protons per cubic centimeter, solar wind speed just under 400 kilometers per second at 390 kilometers per second. The rest of that is fairly unremarkable, although we did just see a bit of a significant shift there in the magnetic field. So just that shift in the magnetic field could put us up toward geomagnetic unrest. And interestingly enough, you can actually see at the end of this ground magnetic perturbations map, you can see a little bit of an uptick there. That is the uptick in the solar wind. And keep in mind, those ground magnetic perturbations, they do come instantly, and they're not particularly predictable. So that's what's going on with the real-time solar wind. An increase in the magnetic field, which is the white line, that's the BT, the total field, which is at 9 nanotesla, and the BZ now quite strong at -7. And those strong BZs induce current into the Earth system, so we could see geomagnetic unrest coming just from that shift in the magnetic field. Next, the GOES magnetometers there, looking fairly smooth over the past 3 days. Pretty unremarkable. Let's take a look at the heliospheric current sheet next. Just yesterday, Earth passed into a South Pole-oriented current sheet depicted here in red. North Pole current sheet rotating out there to the west in green. Stereo B has just snapped into a South Pole current sheet as well. And this data is derived from 51 ground-based magnetometers and magnetometers on stereo A and magnetometers on stereo A and B have magnetometers. Fortunately, stereo B's magnetometer still works. And let's take a look at the line of sight field plot briefly. There's the solar B field depicted in blue. South solar polar field there rotating in depicted in red. North solar polar field rotating out depicted in green. And next we'll look at coronal holes. So this is the past 24 hours. And we've got some quite well-defined coronal holes here in the southeast. They are of South Pole orientation. And there's still quite a ways to go, folks, to get to solar maximum. So this is a great indication of how the sun is not yet at solar maximum. If you look at the latest image, we've got a series of coronal holes here of South Pole orientation, especially this one down here. And the south solar polar fields have a ways to go before they fixate at the north for our next solar minimum coming around 2030 or 2031. Also a great plasma reorientation happening right here in the north portion of the center disk. I'll let that play through a second time, and then we'll go to sunspots. So here's a sunspot situation. We're going to have at least one new named sunspot. So we're going to have some sunspots lose names as they set in the west. Their likelihood to produce large flares is very high. It's as high as it gets when a sunspot is right on the limb like that. So 3274, for example, and really all of these setting sunspot groups have a propensity to produce M or possibly X-class flares. It's very hard to see their magnetic complexity as they get too close to the limb. Let's see, the current most likely spot besides that for large flares, of course, would be from these groups and this group. Also the likelihood of a large flare from up here in the northeast. So there is a lot of area capable of producing large flares, and this is based on the magnetic field complexity and orientation, plasma filaments. And let's take a look at sunspots here. We've got SDO continuum plus 94 angstroms. We'll zoom in, and then we'll lose the 94 angstroms. So most of those groups have been fairly stable here for the past 24 hours. If there's something I'm missing, let us know in the comments. New group just rose up here, and another new group to rise up here soon. So expecting, well, the sunspot number might stay flat here. I'm expecting a little bit of an uptick. We'll see what happens. Let's talk about energetic particles. No spikes in the proton flux. And no major flares, only C-class intensifications. This one almost made it to M-class. But the peak flux was actually a little lower than that. Can I zoom in? Peak flux was C8.9. Something like that. C9.07. So some decent flares there, none reaching into the M class. Again, the propensity for large flares is certainly there. Here's the past 24 hours in 131 angstroms. And let's add 171 angstroms for some additional character. Let's take a look at a star chart, as we are unable to see anything in the sky, as it is still cloudy and fairly foul over Lehigh Valley. The Sun and Jupiter are both in Pisces at the moment. The Sun and the Jupiter. El Sol and Jupiter are in Pisces, which means something to somebody. It means that, like, Poseidon and Apollo are going fishing together or something like that. So that's what's going on overhead over Lehigh Valley. If you want to create your own star chart, skyandtelescope.org is the one we're currently using on the channel. Here's your solar system forecast as we approach a new moon, which I believe shows up on 420. And if you were born on 420, you are literally Hitler. Here's your solar system forecast. There's where things will be in a week on the 24th. We will have a crescent waxing moon by that point, as Mercury makes this side of the solar system a little bit less lonely, as it is devoid of gas giants. Next, we'll look at coronagraphs. And here are yesterday's images. And there actually is an Earth-directed CME in there. We covered it on yesterday's space weather video. If you want to see the imagery of that in more detail, watch yesterday's daily space weather video. There's a convenient record of all of this at youtube.com/smashomash/videos. Yeah, I know, right? Anyway, that's today's coronagraphs. We'll look at some more imagery from Stereo A. At the moment, I don't think there are any coronal mass ejections, additional ones, besides the one expected to arrive on Wednesday, headed toward Earth. This one that you see off to the southeast, that is not earthly directed. I think it's somewhat on the far side also, as I didn't really see any associated plasma, limb darkening, etc. Keep in mind those are slightly different times, so pay attention to the time and date stamps at the bottom. Those images are not synced. Stereo A is behind the Soho Lasco C3 there. So here's a 24-hour video. Let's zoom in a little bit closer to see if we see any plasma exiting. Typically, you'll see some activity on the Earth-facing portion of the solar disk if you have an earthly directed coronal mass ejection. And I'm not so convinced that I can see anything happening. It could be from this plasma reorientation. Sometimes plasma takes a really weird path, but doesn't look like it's earthly directed regardless of whether it's on this side or the other side. Really, we've been seeing kind of an underperformance with all these large sunspots of both solar flares and of coronal mass ejections. Don't expect it to continue, though. These things always find themselves evening out. So let's take a look at filaments next. And yeah, this filament up here is absolutely massive. And I've lost track of the names. We've got a lot of all these dark features, all this bright feature up here, this prominence. Those are all solar filaments, and they all have the capability of becoming coronal mass ejections. They can also become flares if they splash back down toward the chromosphere. And if you want to name filaments after living people, hit us up over on Twitter. Thanks to our new followers over on Twitter. You can also find the link to the free mushroom gummies samples. If you want to try the mushroom gummies, check them out. They will not make you trip balls. They're not magic mushrooms, but there are some great features there. You can get stress suppression gummies. You can get focus gummies. Also, sleep gummies are available. And here's the past 24 hours in 193 angstroms. We've been showing this in the center of our coronagraph images because this wavelength is good at showing large tufts, otherwise known as solar prominences. Also, this is going to be really good at showing this little plasma reorientation happening up here. I think it was mostly a splashdown. Anyway, that's the past 24 hours, 193 angstroms. And let's look at the past couple of hours here in 304 angstroms. That crazy solar vortex going on up there, that's going to be probably on, you'll see it on the space weather rounds being made throughout the day. It looks like a little bit of instability happening right around this area. Let's move to bonus features and blast through those. So the next thing we're going to look at is charging hazards, and we do have some minor surface charging hazards here moving into the central Pacific Ocean, currently in the eastern equatorial Pacific. Those surface charging hazards are caused by low energy electrons on the outside of spacecraft. The GOES electron flux here remains quite low, maybe even surprisingly low. And the forecast is for even lower levels. So not exactly sure what's keeping it that low. But hey, that's NOAA's forecast. No arguments from me there. Again, we are certainly expecting low levels when the CME impact happens on Wednesday, April 19th, after midday universal time. Here's the one-year chart of the relativistic electrons. And we'll show the F layer of the ionosphere, which is where those measurements are made, by the way. This measurement right here, this is made using radiography from a geosynchronous orbit. And it's measured at the F layer of the ionosphere. So we're going to show this slice. The F layer is located at about 300 kilometers of altitude. Feel free to pause the video on this frame if you're not familiar with things like the atmospheric layers and the electromagnetic penetration of radiation into those atmospheric layers. Again, here's one really specific layer, the bridge between Earth and space, the very diffuse F layer of the ionosphere. It is the hottest part of the thermosphere, as the thermosphere is hottest at the top, which is quite different than the troposphere, where all of your weather occurs, which is hottest at the surface. Anyway, this is the vibrational frequency, courtesy of Australian Government Bureau of Meteorology. And if you're not familiar with that map, don't worry. We've got the anomalygram as well. That's anomaly in megahertz from a 30-day median. And if you're seeing something weird going on around this area, that's because that's where the South Atlantic anomaly is located. And that spot right there will be the front of various low and high frequency anomalies moving forward. Anyway, that's the anomalygram for the previous day. There's the latest image. That's 12:15 universal time ionogram and 12:15 universal time anomalygram. The total electron content is the free electrons between your GPS satellite and your handset. Feel free to pause the video on this frame if you're not familiar with the distances in miles. Here is the total electron content forecast. These will be the most likely places to see GPS errors. And if you're a bicyclist, you might rely on your GPS to know where you're going. And of course, if you're in a very desolate area, your Wi-Fi accuracy will not help at all. That's your total electron content forecast. We normally show the North American total electron content forecast, but it's been tied up for a couple of days. Not really working. So here's this new sunspot. Whoops. There we go. and it is a Beta Gamma class sunspot. Doesn't look like Beta Gamma Delta, but it does have a leading South Pole umbra and a trailing North Pole umbra, making it Beta Gamma class. Again, these setting groups have a high propensity to produce large flares, and I would say the most likely spots to see large flares would be in here, and interestingly, up here. So those are the areas to watch for large solar flares. Oops. Here's your full disk rockback, showing you the umbrae and the fields in high res. And let's move into the realm of meteorology. So we're looking for the coldest place in the world, and it's getting a little chilly in Antarctica as autumn has arrived. It's now 82.5 degrees below zero Fahrenheit on the highest and driest continent. Yeah, the highest and driest continent, Antarctica. It's even drier than the Gobi Desert. Anyway, that's by far the coldest part of the planet. If you're wondering the warmest part of the planet, I suspect it's either over here at 104.8 degrees. I suspect it's somewhere in here. There's 106.6 degrees in Central Africa. Anyway, our regularly scheduled programming includes things like the surface winds. And so there they are for the eastern world. And there are the jet streams for the eastern world. We'll be zooming in closer and closer on the U.S. Here are the jet streams of the central world. Fairly orderly there. Doubled up jet streams both north and south of the equator. There are the surface winds of Europe, Africa, and the Middle East. It's staying stormy in the North Atlantic. These are the surface winds of the west. Again, expect purple skies. Purple skies across the U.S. Look for sunsets and sunrises with volcanic gas, like sulfur dioxide, namely, making the sunsets and sunrises purple. Share with us your images on either Instagram or Twitter, and we might put them on the videos. Huge meridional jet stream bend here over the southeastern Pacific. And you know, everything from letters to shapes are very scary. If you see an S, it obviously means that doom and destruction are going to follow, because each thing is very scary. And you should be spooked, folks. You should be very spooked about weather, about climate. And by the way, if anybody wants to know if there's ever been a photograph taken of the Earth, here's the first one taken by a human. Of course, one was actually taken by a robotic probe, Lunar Orbiter 1. But this is the first image ever taken by a human. Yeah, it's before the famous Earthrise image. And you can see Earth's day-night terminator there, just kissing the horizon of the moon. Interestingly enough, you can see the same weather patterns on this and on that. They didn't have Adobe Photoshop in 1968. That taken on Christmas Eve. Another place you can share with your favorite flat earthers would be the Himawari 8. This will make them mad too. Here's the latest image. It's pretty dark on that side of the planet, but there's a great image from the Himawari 8. Yeah, it's a photograph of the planet. Isn't that amazing? Croissant Earth. All right, so here is the current situation for clouds and fog over the Americas. It's infrared radiation from the NASA GOES Interactive Weather Satellite Suite. And let's take a look at a weather.gov map. So here's your National Weather Service map. We've got some blizzard warnings. for portions of the Upper Peninsula and northern Wisconsin. Also some epic snow melt happening. If your location is lit, we're showing you the key. Click your location. At weather.gov, those are too many counties to cover. Here comes some forecasts for the lower 48. This is your temperature anomaly forecast. And check it out, there's some additional hot air coming to Colorado. As if there wasn't enough hot air in Colorado already. Shout out to Scott McIntosh. Scott McIntosh is not putting out hot air. Scott McIntosh is putting out facts. Anyway, that's your temperature anomaly forecast in degrees Celsius for the next 72 hours based on a GFS model. Here is your pressure and precipitation forecast based on the same model, same time frame. A second storm there coming to the Dakotas, as a low is going to form over northeastern Colorado and then move to the north. And here is your accumulated snow depth change in inches. That is quite a bit of snow through 420. Again, don't forget to visit the links below the video. Improve your health and the propensity for this channel to continue to exist. Next, we're looking at soil moisture and some dry parts and some very moist parts of the U.S. Here's a moisture anomaly. And some of those dry areas are usually dry. Others, not so much. Places like Northern Virginia certainly have a lot of hot air, as there are so many federal employees there. You would think that a swamp of that magnitude would be a little more moist. Continuing on to look at our lightning mapper, and Florida and Florida and southern Mexico had some pretty berserk lightning over the past about 10 hours. And let's see if we have any current terrestrial strikes here on lightningmaps.org, powered by blitzortung.org. Go ahead, say it. Say it, folks. You know you want to. blitzortung.org. And we indeed do see some terrestrial strikes. Check it out. Kissimmee. There's thunder rolling in. Also Orlando, Winter Garden, St. Cloud. An active cell there as we stream the video. Anyway, there's your full globe map. And let's show some more current data to close this mother out. Here is your full 50-state view of USA, the allegedly United States of America. Here is the lower 48 view, as snow falls around the western Great Lakes and rain falls around the eastern Great Lakes. Here is clouds and fog. That's the NASA GOES Interactive Weather Satellite Shortwave Radiation Map. Since it's dark over half the country, and there's a great view of that rotating low there moving over Michigan. Just moving off of the lake there, moving over the state of Michigan. And there's a lot of dry air surrounding that system. It won't serve to strengthen it. However, there's a lot of moisture trapped as well, and it's cold. So those things combined are what's causing it, as it's going to wring the rest of the moisture out of that air. Here's a recap, the U.S. Doppler radar. It shows vertical motion in the air column. Shortwave radiation shows clouds and fog. And 6.19 nanometer radiation shows the water vapor. Anyway, thanks for tuning in to the Smash News Network, least busted name in news. If you enjoy the content, help us out with a like, leave a comment, etc. Press the share button. We'll see you soon, and in the meantime, may that solar wind be at your back. Don't forget to visit the links here and in these type of places.